What's up, and welcome back to the Kind of Funny Screencast. Of course, I am Tim Geddes, and I'm joined by the sad boy himself, Barrett Courtney.
Tim, I don't think there is anything as morbid or sad as a tiny little robot being so scared that he has to open up his chest to turn himself off. I was horrified watching that little robot not fully kill himself, but kind of in that moment killing himself. It was a lot.
You keep saying this
Barrett,
show is
how many
weird.
times have you been in a situation though where like if you could just go unconscious and peace out and that was your response to it?
Oh, that's my superpower. I can already do that. Just turn off my consciousness and just kind of zone out. But yeah, that was a lot to watch at 12:30 in the morning.
Yeah, definitely. How are you doing, Anthony Carboni?
So good. This was a real turning point for this show. A lot of things happened, and I'm excited to discuss them one by one because they're complex like a fine wine, Tim Geddes.
Oh yeah, when I think the Book of Boba Fett, I think fine wine for sure, absolutely. Yeah. And rounding out our crew once again, of course, we have Saige from Pixel Circus.
Hey, hello. I too was personally victimized by small robot suffering, and I do believe in Fennec Shan's supremacy, so this was a pretty good episode for me.
Yeah, as I was watching it, I was like, I'm pretty sure Saige is gonna like this one, just because we got some more.
When Fennec thrives.
Yeah. Before we get into the show, everyone, I need to show you guys the shirt that I bought because I saw this online and I'm like, that's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. I need it.
Oh, yes. Spider Boys.
Oh my goodness.
That looks like one of those like t-shirts you get from a scalper outside of a concert.
Yeah, that looks like the Lulu shirt that Alyssa got for me for Christmas.
That's an early 2000s hip hop album cover.
Uh-huh.
But with the Spider-Mans.
I just love it. Tobey Maguire's face is now on my body, and I could not be more happy because this is the Kind of Funny Screencast where each and every week we get together to talk about the latest in TV, movies, and movie trailers. We did a breakdown to the Moon Knight trailer you can check out on youtube.com/kindoffunny or roosterteeth.com. If you want to get this as a podcast, just search your favorite podcast service for Kind of Funny Screencast, and we'll be right there for you. If you wanted to get the show ad-free and watch live as we record it, you got to go to patreon.com/kindoffunny, just like our Patreon producers, Molecule, James Davis, and Pranksy have all done. And if you wanted to write into this show with your questions, your comments, your theories, whatever, you can go to kindoffunny.com/screencast to do just that. Today, we're brought to you by HelloFresh, but I'll talk to you about that later because I want to get into it. We're talking about Boba Fett, Episode 4, The Gathering Storm. Now, I want to start off.
Did you have cameo by Thundercat on your bingo card?
So here's my thing. Thank you, Carboni, for jumping right into this. First off, I am unaware of Thundercat as a name or as a person. Looking at the Wikipedia, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm definitely familiar with some of his music. But first off, Steven Thundercat Bruner is like the dopest name I could possibly ever imagine. But it is nowhere
his
near
legal God-given name.
Yes, exactly. It's nowhere near as dope as that bomber jacket / cape that he was wearing. Because that might have been the coolest Star Wars outfit I have seen since Luke Skywalker in Jedi.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's really good.
When that whole mod parlor, did y'all think the same thing I did? Which was like, if Cyberpunk had given me 10% of this.
10% of it! That's exactly what I was thinking, Anthony. That's exactly what I was thinking. This is the Cyberpunk we deserved.
So good.
I'm always team replace my insides with robot parts. Like, if the opportunity was given, I would ask no questions. I
need
say,
to introduce
go right
you
ahead.
to my friend Kevin. Yeah. Kevin's a big fan of putting a chip in him. So
brain in a jar.
I put my brain in a jar, carry it around with a giant mechanical spider. I don't care. I'm down. So this mod shop, immediately at the beginning of the episode, I was just like.
I was saying before we went live on this that I'm so happy that I am doing this weekly with you guys because I feel like it's a safe space to just like this show, even though it's not that great. And that's totally okay, because there's a lot to like in it, and appreciate how weird it is at times and how kind of like un-Star Wars most of it feels, but then every once in a while there'll be the most Star Wars thing ever. And it's like I kind of like both sides of those, which is like I think at the end of the day is a success for this. But like there's certain things that this episode did that I think were really kind of speaking to the me's of the world that were kind of like a couple episodes ago, we were even talking about this. I was like, I wish they spent a little more time on the Sarlacc pit situation, because it kind of just felt like, and I'm out. And that's it. And the fact that they went back and fought the thing was very cool to me. Very Star Wars, very fan service in the just give me what I'm looking for type way. But I will be goddamn damned if I didn't lose my shit when I see that ship going, shooting all the little motherfuckers on the speeders. I'm like, this is awesome. This is Boba Fett. This is what I want to see. And I was like, oh man, you got to give me the subatomic bomb. You got to do it. One day they're going to do it. I hope they do it. And then they did it in this episode to fucking kill the Sarlacc. And I'm like, this is fan fiction at its best. Like, this is exactly what I wanted to see Boba Fett fucking do to that Sarlacc.
I wish that we had gotten, we've been talking about the pacing of these flashbacks. And I think, listen, the importance of showing Boba Fett growing through his time on Tatooine, being removed from his gadgets and his gizmos and his armor and everything he knows, and learning how important a tribe is to him, right? Like he says it at the end. That was very important. But flashbacks can be told out of order. And I feel like if we had seen this in episode 1 or 2, I feel like it really would have changed a lot of people's feeling on this show, on the events that are happening in it, and on the way that it's paced.
I agree. I watched this and I was like, oh my God, I'm so glad that we're getting the story of how him and Fennec connected. That's awesome. We're getting the opportunity to see the badass that we haven't gotten to really see her be up to this point that we know. But also,
we know she can eat. We know she can lean and she can eat.
She can lean and she can eat. But like, this felt like a very important episode that should have come first. Or if you're really wanting to hold out on us, last. Where it's like, hey, we're seeing all of this backstory, we're seeing all of this exposition, and then it is really, these are the two leads of the show. Their relationship is so important, and I want it to be treated with that importance, because if you think of The Mandalorian, it hinges entirely on the relationship between Grogu and Mando. This also should be hinging, I feel like, more on the relationship between Boba Fett and Fennec Shand, and I want them to know how important this was, so that going forward, they can give us more of it.
Yeah, these two deadly loners find each other and find trust for each other and work together and let each other into each other's lives in a way that characters like this, we know that nobody saw underneath the helmet. You know what I mean? Like that was a big deal. So for them to let each other into their lives like this, I really wanted to see more of how that works and what that's like. And it's a shame that it took this long for the show to give us that, but I'm glad that we're here now.
I am too.
Barrett, Courtney, what'd you think of this episode?
Yeah, I was in the rock and hard place last week, where it was like my least favorite episode so far, but some of the coolest moments in the show so far were in that episode.
Yeah, because you love a fruit cart.
Yeah, exactly. And this episode like really brought me back, where I think I was tweeting late last night with a friend of the show and national good boy Andrew Goldfarb. And
Such a good boy.
Yeah, and I was saying to him of like, I think this is the first week where I'm really excited for next week's episode. And like,
I wonder why. Because
every week I've kind of like forgotten that Book of Boba Fett's coming out, and I'm like, oh shit, I got to stay up till midnight because we got to talk about it in the morning. And so like now I'm like counting down the days until next week. And yeah, I was really into this episode. I did, we got the him in the tank at the very beginning, going into another flashback. I was like, all right. But then I loved how much time we spent in this flashback and really fleshing out how him and Fennec connected, and just giving us like little things, and even things that not even plot wise, but just like ideas that we were talking about last week of just like the idea of like them doing heist type of stuff, and we got that this episode
into Jabba's palace.
Yeah,
like come on,
and that was really really cool. And it was like a very small kind of version, and like big stakes for Boba because it's his ship. But I think in the grand scheme of things, kind of smaller stakes and stuff like that. And I really enjoyed that. And then going back into what going to the Sarlacc pit. All of this stuff. I do have like a weird question about that in a couple minutes, but then going to the back to present day, what this means for like what their relationship means, how they feel about like growing a tribe, essentially, a group of trustworthy guns for hire, right? And I really liked all the stuff that we're getting as setup for these last 3 episodes, right? Yeah, I'm really interested to see it, and yeah, I had a fun time this episode. We got the body mod scene, which straight up, I know we talk about all the time of like Mando season 1 and 2 felt like in the way that it structured its story, very like video gamey, where it's like, oh, like he's going on a side quest here, and oh, he's doing this so he can gather enough materials to do this main mission kind of stuff. And that whole mod scene felt like a cutscene where you go to like a shop healer or something, and you just get like the quick like kind of like cuts of like them fixing Fennec, and I was like, huh, that's interesting. We got like a really cool new droid chopping up fucking food,
General Grievous style,
and I wanted, and the big disappointments, the only 2 disappointments that I've had in this episode, where we didn't get a bigger fight with that knife boy, because I felt like it was too easy to just cut his neck.
So Barrett, may I jump in and push my glasses up?
Yes, you may, Anthony Carboni.
So we saw a few droids in the kitchen, right? Yeah. The first droid we saw was an EV series droid. That's the torture droid from Return of the Jedi. Okay.
Do we think it's the same exact one, and he's just been repurposed into the kitchen?
The same kind.
It's the same. It's definitely the same kind. I don't think it's the same one.
Okay.
And then the Cook series droid that we're talking about is actually a COO series droid from Attack of the Clones. So we have seen that before.
Oh.
And because it was an Attack of the Clones reference, they were doing the Grievous.
Yeah.
And so they did the Grievous, but it's just a kitchen droid, so they slice its head off. And so to me, I thought that was like a very funny joke.
Was,
but maybe.
Okay.
I saw that and I thought it was a fun nod.
Okay.
I totally understand though, because Star Wars media is working on standing alone, and in that I totally understand it not being as satisfying for it to just be done when it had these big kitchen knives, but I loved the Grievous personally.
It's a very Lucasfilm thing too. It's like an Indiana Jones joke. It's a Star Wars joke, and I love that they did it. And then the little scared bunny droids.
Here's my thing about that.
Yeah,
I didn't like this scene because it's another one of those reminders to me that I'm like, this isn't what I think Boba Fett is. I don't think of Boba Fett being this guy running after a droid. Oh, where'd you go? Oh, like it felt so cartoony and like little kid movie like, and I'm like, this is just so weird. Like it just
But
I
didn't like
challenge
that.
what your idea of Boba Fett is, because I want to know how much of it is what they have showed us of Boba Fett and how much of it is what you hoped Boba Fett would be.
I mean,
because they didn't show us that much of Boba Fett and him being a badass. We all just, and I did this too, I very much inserted that Boba Fett was a badass.
But so that's the thing though, is that I totally get what you're saying, and I'm even saying that myself. It's like he's not what I thought he was going to be, but I'm only thinking that because of what they've shown me. Even in this show, I feel like this was out of character. Even with the Boba that they've built.
I would think it was silly, but like at the same time, in the same episode right before they do this heist, he's petting his bantha and kissing it goodbye and shit like that. Like,
but that's not silly. That to me is endearing, and that to me is like him like showing that he's empathetic, and like they've set him up to like animals, right? We've got that already, but this just felt like, what the fuck?
I see everyone's point of view on this, and I think one of the things about it was like, if the funny thing to me and the Boba Fett bit of that gag to me was, do you know who I am? I'm Boba Fett, and the droid turns itself off. That's the gag. I do think they maybe played up the like, where'd you go, little buddy thing, maybe half a beat too long.
And so with
but
that,
I did like it.
So who are you? I'm Boba Fett, and then
Mm-hmm.
his theme song kicks in. I'm like, this is awesome. But getting to it, that scene just reminded me of the speeder chase last week more than it reminded me of anything else. It was like that, like humor that just didn't feel right for what we're doing. It was a fruit cart type thing.
It was a little Tom and Jerry, but I didn't mind it too much. I do just want to say that those little bunny droids are called LEP droids, and they are from the Clone Wars show. And theoretically, they were at Maz Kanata's, but we didn't see them. We only heard them because they make that cute little bunny droid noise.
I love you so much.
I was gonna say they looked familiar, and it's weird when they translate stuff that's been in the animated stuff into live action because you're like. Is that the thing that I knew from this other show? So yeah, my only disappointment, the knife droid, I feel like should have gotten more screen time essentially. And then
that's for Knife Droid, a Star Wars story.
Yeah. And then the only thing that left me kind of wanting, especially when we're approaching the last 3 episodes here, is that like the antagonist force that Boba Fett is going up against, I still don't think has been built up well enough to really be like, oh fuck, he's gonna go to war with the Pikes, and there's this like, you know, big conflict between them, and like the Pikes as characters, as like villains, quote unquote, in this story for Boba Fett, I don't think have like been built up in a very interesting way. They just feel more like a necessary entity for him to go up against, and that's my only thing where I'm like, I wish this was done a little bit better going into like the last half of the show, but we still have 3 episodes, so maybe there's some more work to be done there.
That's interesting, and it's a good point, because last week I was like, wow, it's crazy this is 7 episodes, so going into the 4th felt like, what are they going to do with it? And I didn't expect them to go as flashbacky as they did. And to Carboni's point, I think that when the show is done, it might have a better chance at actually being good when we have the context of all of it. But I still think that when that happens, if that happens, the ordering and pacing is off. Like it is the order of the flashbacks and the order of the present time stuff. It just doesn't feel satisfying so far, because with where we're at now, over halfway through the series, like Barrett was saying, it's like we only have 3 episodes left. That doesn't feel like enough of present time stuff to be able to handle it all. Especially, okay, clearly Mandalorian's coming. That's pretty cool. But are we going to get the next episode being half flashback to fill in that final gap to get him actually up to Mando?
He's completed healing, so there's no more tank for him to go to. And if there's no more tank, there's no possible way for us to do any flashbacks anymore. Okay,
you can't go into the flashback tank and breathe in all the flashbacks.
I feel like they did that specifically to be like, that was the last flashback we're doing.
No, and they even say you're fully healed, and you know we're supposed to take that as not just his body, but he's dealt with what has led up to this.
He's fully processed everything.
He's ready for everything. Yeah.
Which is followed by Fennec literally saying, like, well, what about the internal scars? Like, you're still not well, my guy.
No, who is? Womp-a-womp womp.
Fennec walked in and said, therapy?
Yeah. They don't exist. They don't exist. Where are they?
Let me tell you about our sponsors real quick. This episode is brought to you by HelloFresh. Sticking to your New Year's resolutions can be hard, but if you're focusing on saving money by ordering less takeout, learning to cook, or prioritizing your wellness, smashing your goals is a piece of cake with HelloFresh. HelloFresh has endless options to make cooking at home simple and enjoyable by delivering pre-portioned ingredients to your door, including farm-fresh produce that arrives within a week. HelloFresh has 50 menu and market items to choose from every single week, including some more family-friendly or gourmet choices. Kevin Coelho, Paula Coelho, they've been loving HelloFresh. They, of course, Paula, being a vegetarian, like the options of having the vegetarian stuff, and they've been having some fantastic meals over there in their Coelho household. Go to HelloFresh.com/KindaFunny16 and use code KindaFunny16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. That's HelloFresh.com/KindaFunny16 and use code KindaFunny16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. Back to it. So, Saige, where are you at with looking forward at the rest of the show?
Looking forward at the rest of the show, I am excited for us to get out of flashback territory. My personal wish is that this whole episode had just been given to the flashback and that they had genuinely wrapped it up, and it could have had that moment of him emerging from the tank and the droid saying, "You're fully healed," And that could have been the end of the episode to me, which would have really solidified us wrapping up all of these memories and this exposition up to this point. And also moving on. It's the halfway point. I think that would have been the perfect ending of it to me. Looking forward, I agree that I think we're moving out of that territory, but I don't know how excited I am about where we're moving. I'm intrigued by it, but it feels like they keep setting up storylines in the present that go, hey, there's this interesting thing. Never mind. Hey, here's another thing. Never mind. No, actually, we're good. So, for instance, we held this like large dinner at his palace, of course, and everybody was there. And he was like, "Are you with me? Can we do this?" And they were like, "No." And he was like, "Close enough." And that's fair. And he stood up and he looked over the table and made eye contact with no one but the top of the lens. That was a little odd for me. I didn't love it. Like, I get it. Logically, I understand that these people aren't going to be like, yeah, let's rally with Boba Fett. They said the correct things, but what do I have to be excited about in the present? I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've got two questions for everyone, I think, about that, right? Because what I immediately thought was, okay, so number one, does this end with is this just Boba Fett going up against the Pikes and the other families going, we respect you now? And that's the end of this series, this season.
Yeah.
Right? And then we leave these crime families in Tatooine and the underworld and all of the syndicates and all that stuff for a future series, for something else. Does this spill over into Mando? Is what's going on with the families on Tatooine actually a setup for season 3 of Mando?
I think
and how would we feel about that?
My gut tells me we're not going to get season 2 of this show. And I could be wrong about that, but I think that, especially knowing that Mando's coming either next episode or soon, I think that that's going to start setting up whatever season 3 is. Because remember, like we were talking about last week, and now officially, like, we're caught up to the timeline. Like, this is the furthest thing we've seen in the Mandoverse timeline so far. So I think that they definitely could set things up to have Mando do in season 3, especially because where Mando season 2 ends, they really could go a million different directions. They could do anything with the character because he doesn't have Grogu anymore. And we know that him and Bo-Katan, like the Mandalorian stuff, like at some point they'll get to that. But like they don't need to necessarily right now. So they could do more Tatooine stuff. I don't know. Barrett, what do you think?
I would say for Mando's story, like I think they, especially with the stakes that are set from Bo-Katan's side, I feel like that is something that does need to be addressed probably very quickly in season 3, or at least set up to build up for the entirety of season 3, because the way they just kind of left that in season 2 was like, all right, like, what does this do to y'all's relationship? I think this is more exciting of just like, I don't know if the Tatooine stuff is really going to bleed into Mando's story a whole lot for season 3, but I think this will be kind of a cool, just like a cool check-in with him before we get to the season 3 stuff. And, you know, we don't even know if, you know, maybe season 3 takes place before he's called by Boba Fett and all this stuff. So I think there's a lot that they could do with that, but I think it'll be like a fun little check-in to see what he's been up to, and to give us like an idea of like maybe like what he was either up to in season 3 or what he's going to be up to in season 3, right? And so that I'm excited for. I did have the wishful thinking, Carboni, especially because they we're talking at the end. They need muscle. He's got these army of Zoomers with body mods who did not see. I'm pretty sure
they call them the mods.
They call them the mods, and I thought about their scooters, and I was like, you can't just call them the mods. That's too funny.
Well, they definitely did that on purpose because it's too fucking perfect. And so like when Fennec's like, oh, we need muscle, because these kids like. All right, like they can only do enough. We saw them kind of fight Chrysanthemum. I always forget how to say his name.
You said it.
Mm-hmm. And they did okay. They were serviceable, but they don't have like muscle to like actually fuck some Pikes up, right? And so when Fennec was like, you got to look in the right place. And before the music hit, I was convinced because Fennec met a different bounty hunter in a recent Star Wars show called Bad Batch, and fought with one Cad Bane. And I was like, are we finally going to get this boy? And then the
Y'all
Mando
keep-
music
y'all
hit, and I
keep
was like,
Danny, live action Cad Bane, and I just don't know. I just don't know about that big 10-gallon cowboy hat in live action.
I think
don't
it would
know.
be perfect, Carboni. Carboni, we got Zoomer body mod kids in the last 2 episodes.
That feels
Yeah.
way more
Live-
reasonable.
What?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But I do want to talk more about Black Chrysanthemum.
Yes.
Yeah.
I really want to talk about Black Chrysanthemum
Who
in this
is like
episode because
realizing that he is past his prime and like is like a high school bully and is just like, I'm gonna be mean just to be mean and a drunk.
Well,
I've got
he's not being mean just to be mean. Let's remember that the Wookiee Trandoshan fucking political situation is very dicey.
This
Right.
is
Remember
fair.
that even if you don't know that from Star Wars, in the first episode of this series, what does the Trandoshan give to Boba Fett as tribute? A fucking Wookiee pelt.
right.
Yeah.
They hate each other.
Sage,
Black
go on.
Chrysanthemum in this episode, lukewarm take here, made me uncomfortable in the way that kangaroos make me uncomfortable. Which is the way that men make me uncomfortable. It's a layered situation. I didn't like anything about it, and I want to like Black Chrysanthemum. I want to be out here like, yeah, fucking throw down. But the way he like can't put his arms all the way down because he's like too buff, and the way that like he just looks like an angry drunk in this episode, I just wanted him to go away. I didn't like that he was like seeming like he takes pre-workout. I didn't enjoy
Yeah.
him being there.
No, but he has to though, because he's trying to cut right now. He's trying to get some lean muscle. I love the idea of Black Chrysanthemum as one of those TikToks where a kangaroo flexes its abs at you.
That's exactly it. Those ones where they like step up at you like that. Like
Yeah.
I hate that.
Well,
I'm sorry.
and that's-
I hate that.
That's one of the things that I actually like a lot about Chrysanthemum, though.
Carboni's a big kangaroo fan.
I
Is
hate
number one.
kangaroos.
I'm working with a trainer right now, and I said I want kangaroo abs. That's what I want. I want to get
Give me
kangaroo
the Black
jacked.
Chrysanthemum.
I want
Kangaroo
kangaroo
jacked!
jacked is what I
Oh
said
my God!
to the trainer.
Too good.
But Chrysanthemum is such an inversion of what we think of Wookiees. Like, oh, poor Wookiees, they're just gentle giants, and they were put into servitude and blah blah blah. And like Chrysanthemum is like, oh no,
I agree, and that's why I want to
could
like him.
flip.
I
And that's-
want to like it.
I want him in there more. And like also, we're just 1 degree away from Afra the longer he's in there, and that's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
important. And that means we're just 1 degree away from BT and 000. And like I just need
So you
need
think
my
though
murder
they can work
3PO.
in live action, but not Cad Bane?
A murderous C3PO works a lot better than a guy with a Dutch accent in a fucking cowboy hat with a 6-shooter.
It's gonna be great when it happens. All of it. I can't wait.
I mean, I'll like it. I will like it. I'm just like, maybe we don't need to do it. I'll like it. I like everything that happens.
Same, absolutely. Also worth talking about from that scene is Garza, because I'm obsessed. Garza being the person who's like owns the cantina.
Jennifer
on
Beals.
Tatooine.
oh my God.
Yeah.
No, I love her so much.
Right?
Since
What a whole
episode 1,
show.
I've been like, you're dope. And then
Yeah.
I didn't expect her, like Jennifer Beal. It's like, okay, cool. Maybe she's just gonna be like, that's a fun, like, oh, we know this actress type thing. But it's like she keeps coming back, and I really like her kind of like playing the game, and like kind of like
love her game.
owning the cantina. I love that they shouted out Max by name, so it's like that
Yes.
is Max Rebo. What's up?
Yeah.
But anyway, go for it.
And,
I just-
and she hired poor DJ Rex. She hired poor Rex after his tour bus crashed.
I just feel like I could watch an entire series of what her life is like. I'm fascinated by that. I think it's really interesting of like her being the center point between this ever-changing like crime dynamic of Tatooine, and she's clearly so good at it. So when she walked up and she put a hand so confidently on Black Chrysanthemum and was like, "Hey, we know all about you. You don't have to do this." I was like, that is one of the fiercest people on this show.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
100%.
The idea of,
So
we talked
cool.
about this, the Twi'lek thing of like, okay, well, we're seen as like these subservient, whatever. So how do we use that to our advantage to actually gain power? And we see that with the Major Domo. We see that with Garza. And I love Garza as, she's Rick from Casablanca. She's she owns the speakeasy in the detective story, and she's the one that's got to like keep the peace with all, like she's the one that's really keeping the peace with all these families, you know? And I love that. And I think if this underworld story is given time to breathe, whether it's in more Boba Fett or whether it's spread out across the other series that we have coming, I mean, I think we're going to see so much more of her, and that makes me very excited.
Yeah. And I keep saying this, but the credits continue to be the dopest parts of these shows. Seeing the concept art is so good with that music hitting. But there's one piece of concept art of Fennec like pulling Boba out of the Sarlacc pit. I'm like, I want that on a wall. It looked so freaking tight. Shout out to them.
Oh, the question that I had with the whole Sarlacc pit thing, because he was convinced that the armor was in the Sarlacc pit. And I know that can be kind of explained in that, like, you know, he woke up and then his armor was no longer on him. But, like, how did he think he got out of there?
I was wondering the same thing. Is how did he think the armor came off? It just, got too slippy?
Like,
yeah, he got too slippy.
He was just a real buttered up stomach acid?
He got out with, like, he punches up out of the sand with the armor. Did he think it just, like, fell off of him and rolled back into the Sarlacc? Like, I was so confused of like what the motivation and convincing of that was, and I was just like,
that's interesting.
I felt like there could have been a better explanation for having an excuse to go and fuck up the Sarlacc, which I could have just done with I was inside this thing for 5 years. No one should ever go through this. Like, I was in it for 5 years and I made it out alive. No one should have to go through that. Let's kill this thing. And like, that's all I would have needed. But the fact that they're like, I need to find my armor that I left the Sarlacc pit with, I was like, that doesn't quite make any sense.
It's interesting because the bigger question to me there was or the question that I thought about, now that you bring up the armor, I'm like, yeah, why did he think that? Why did he think that he unconsciously stripped off all his armor and gave it back to the Sarlacc? I don't know. But
like the space cancer goo in a Sarlacc will make you do weird shit.
It'll make you do weird shit, man. It'll turn the frame green and grainy. You know what I mean? And who knows what's gonna happen there.
But I do appreciate it.
The big question for me was a character question of, here's a dude who's like really respects animals and nature and understands what they are and doesn't fault them for what they are. Like, we see how kind he is. Sarlacc gonna eat. Sarlacc isn't mad at Boba Fett. Sarlacc's just gonna eat. Why do you want to shoot down that Sarlacc so bad, buddy?
Well, it's not that he didn't start shooting it until he was forced into a dangerous position. Where he's
that's fair.
He's going up to it gently in his big fucking ship.
That looked like so stupid. So incredibly
the wide
stupid.
Shot of like it looks
dumber
like a
dumber shot to you, Tim.
It looks like a
bunny rabbit,
just looking. It reminded me of like the Iron Giant looking down at his like little human friend. Where I was like, this is so weird and like uncanny and funny and like not a purposeful way. And I
agree.
But also it gave us the excuse of the bomb going off in the Sarlacc, which is like one of the coolest things.
I don't mind these little cartoony silly bits as much as y'all do. I think they're fine.
Oh, I don't hate them. It was just like one of those things where I was like, this is funny. I don't hate it, but
they make me giggle.
Yeah,
I agree. They make me giggle as well. I'm a big fan of Star Wars ships, and I think Boba Fett's ship is so silly and bad. Why does it look like that? You're like, oh my God, Boba Fett, right?
Yeah.
Like this really hyped up Boba Fett. We got to design what he travels in. And they made that. It looks like the backpack I bought to carry my cat around in. Those like old backpacks. It looks like one of those, and it's like doesn't make any sense based on what we know about Star Wars ships either. It's just weird. It looks like a kid drew it.
I've always wondered why a fire spray like that goes less aerodynamic after takeoff. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that's always been my big question is like it takes off very aerodynamic, but actually it always turns itself towards the most resistance, right? So as it's taking off, like air pressure is going to be pushing down on it. And then as it goes forward, like, I don't know. I know it doesn't matter in space, but it feels weird to me when they're flying through an atmosphere like that.
See, but my thing is, I appreciate that Boba is a man of fashion over function, just like myself, because
there it is.
The function's not there. He likes the way it looks. Cool. Let him have his ship. But what I really appreciate is that he was like, okay, my dad had blue armor. That meant the ship was blue. I have green armor. So the ship it must be green.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that about Boba Fett.
The color coordination on point there. There was
that's
one
fair.
last thing that I wanted to bring up, and I forget what it was. The question is, do we think Mando's the only, because again, I just want Cad Bane, my big blue boy, to come hang out, but it doesn't have to necessarily only be him. Do we think we're going to see any other appearances? Is Mando the only muscle that they hire for the showdown with the Pikes?
It's a good question. And honestly, like this is the first time I'm excited to see what happens next time. And you were saying that a little bit, Barrett, but like, I think that's an obvious, easy thing because they're teasing a character we like. And like, it's a guarantee he's showing up. It's not like, oh my God, they're hinting that this might happen. Like, we know Mando's going to be in this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's cool. And I'm especially interested in it, like, based on what I was saying earlier, that we don't really know what Mando's doing right now. So getting him is interesting because is he going to be with Bo-Katan? Is he going to be with the crew that we last saw him with? Like, are they going to be with him as extra muscle in addition to if they're going out and finding others? I'm excited to see what they end up doing with that, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't have any other particular cameos in mind necessarily. I feel like there are a lot of things from like the extended universe that there are opportunities for there. By the fact that Fennec is the one looking for muscle, I think more of like assassin network kind of people. But I don't think, like, I think Mando will be the peak of cameo, and everyone else is going to be like, oh right, they were in Clone Wars that one time or something. You know what I mean? Like some kind of droid that we recognize from that, or you know, somebody where it's like, yeah, that person might have in theory been part of a rebellion.
Yeah, it's, I guess where I'm at right now is, and this is like kind of like growing off of a point Barrett made earlier, but like, I don't feel like the threat is big enough to need to gather an entire team to take down. So it's like them having just Boba, Fennec, Black Chrysanthemum, and Mando right now seems like overkill. You know what I mean?
Yeah, to kill 12 fish dudes.
Do you think that the army he is assembling is exclusively for the war with the Pikes, or do you think that that comment is larger on, hey, I'm trying to be the crime lord, I'm going to need a crew, and forming
Big
more
shot
of the
gangster.
ensemble?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Especially,
which I hope that's the case. I think that's cooler.
We haven't even brought up one of the best moments in the episode where, you know, he's gathering the family around. They're at the dinner table and they're like, "Why should we listen to you?" And then the Rancor fucking
that was
his
great.
claws up. That was I loved that moment. It was
I think if he's assembling all this muscle, I think it's for a potential rebellion from the families afterwards, like a power vacuum thing. Like maybe they're going to come for him, even though they have that whole discussion of like, oh yeah, they agreed to do it, but I don't think, the discussion
Trust
that they
them
had
to
was
act within their best interest.
It's like he said, he's gonna, they're gonna do what's good for them.
And the second the Pikes are gone and he's weakened, like maybe it's in their best interest to invade. I don't know. The thing that I also wonder with cameos and this like coming battle or war or whatever it is they tease that Crimson Dawn theme.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bigger syndicate that's watching all of this, and I wonder how much of that we're gonna see.
Which is why I think there's a season 2. That's why I think there's a season 2. There's too much backstory in this season to not get a season 2.
I'm putting some things together, and Saige, you just like light bulbed me for a second here, talking about the idea of Mando coming because he needs the crew. What if they're just building it that Mando is going to be part of the crew and his crew is going to be part of Boba's crew, and Jabba's palace just kind of becomes home base for Mando in season 3, and that like this they always have this dope set that they already have, and it merges, and that's how Mandalorian season 3 is dealing with all the Mandalorians. So it deals with the Mandalorian lore stuff, but it's also dealing with Din and Boba. Like not equally, but like they could do the syndicate stuff. We can get Crimson Dawn. We can get all of that. Like I think that would be a very interesting season 3 of Mandalorian.
Yeah, I think that's the only way that Boba Fett just being a setup for Mando would be okay with me. Because otherwise, like I think of WandaVision being this encapsulated season that perfectly starts and ends. And as much as it's a great show and I'd love more, I'm like, no, that's right. It's one season and I get that.
Right.
Boba Fett does not feel like that to me. We're only at a midway point, so it technically still could. But it doesn't have the satisfying, you learned everything you need to learn about Boba Fett. You get why we told this specific story that I think WandaVision had. So it being a setup for those to kind of merge in Boba Fett to continue within Mando, totally down for it. Ideal situation for me is a second season where we get to be like, okay, we set it up. Now it's actually the story of the crime of Tatooine and the power structures of it. That'd be tight.
I do love that idea. Like, I would love to see more of this as its own standalone, just because I like as much standalone, Star Wars universe stuff as possible to intermingle with each other. But I do also like the idea of a Mando season 3. We have 3 very different ideas of what a Mandalorian is now between Boba and Din and Bo-Katan. And like having them all have to work together when they have very different ideas of what, success is and what a Mandalorian is, could be like a very interesting. I like that idea.
Yeah. I do like that.
And
I like that
reminds
idea,
me of like that reminds me when Book of Boba Fett was first announced, and we didn't quite understand what it was that first night when the season finale of season 2 had aired, and we're like, what is this? And I was like almost convinced that Book of Boba Fett was technically Mando season 3, and that they were like, Jin got his book, Boba's getting his book,
That's what I thought too.
Yeah, and like that was the theory. And so like for maybe there is still that idea, but to put it all into the Mandalorian where it is about the 3 of them, like I would absolutely adore that. And then give it as an excuse to learn more about like what Ahsoka is up to. Shout out to my Ahsoka mug. And the search,
not to Ahsoka, but to his mug.
Yeah,
respect his mug.
And her and her search for fellow Rebels members. I need more of that as soon as possible. And if we get that through Mando, I'm down for it.
The thing of all of this spinning off to where eventually, like, so many of these animated characters, I mean, I know they don't need like quote unquote legitimacy or anything like that through showing up in live action, but we do know that more people watch the live action, and the live action stuff is considered more like the more important, quote unquote, important stuff. Seeing more and more of these animated characters in live action would make me so happy.
Yeah.
Like Cad Bane, maybe Willem Dafoe as Cad Bane, Yes.
I mean, I'm down for it. The natural droid cheekbones are right there.
Yeah.
Rabala the Hutt or nothing.
I love it. I love it. We'll be back next week to talk about episode 5 of the Book of Boba Fett. And also here on Screencast, like I said, we did the Moon Knight trailer reaction yesterday, and we're also doing Peacemaker every single week. Are y'all watching Peacemaker?
Not yet.
Yes.
I watched
What
the
a
first
show.
episode finally.
What a show.
It was the Batmite clip they released on the internet that made me do it.
Yeah.
I
It's
was
good.
like, whoops.
Episodes,
It's really
the first
damn
3
good.
episodes, choice. Very good.
Do me a
Have
favor,
you seen
Tim.
4
After
yet?
the,
Oh, no. You haven't.
do me a favor, after the show's over, everybody just hang out here in this chat room for like 20 minutes so I can Moon Knight.
Oh my God, of course, of course. But until then, leave some comments below about what you thought about this episode. And until next time, I love you all. Goodbye.